And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
Today's guest is Shira Suzanne. I'm going to discuss with Shira how elements of near-death experiences fit within Judaism and Jewish mysticism, as well as how she met her angel, guides, and ghost. Shira, thank you so much for joining us and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's start with your first paranormal experience.
Well, I was about 1.5 years, 2 years old, and I was at the point of where I wasn't saying whole sentences and wasn't saying large words, mama, dad, just little fundamental words. And I was playing in the playpen in front of my parents on the couch, and I pulled myself up from the playpen, and I looked at my parents on the couch, and I said, as clear as I'm saying to you now, in my past life, I was a taxi cab driver in Chicago. And my parents looked at each other and looked at me, and they about fell off the couch. And so, for a long time, I tried to remember, and I believe that that was my higher self. And I've started listening to these near-death experiences through the past couple of years. And when I thought about through the years up until a few years ago, what do I remember about my past life? And the only thing that I can remember is in between my lives, I remember a garden, and the colors were brilliant. The colors here on Earth, I don't care how neon you get or what spectrum you look at, the colors here on Earth are muted. And I thought my whole life, I was the only one that knew that the garden that you go to in between your lives have these beautiful, brilliant, vibrant colors. And when I started listening to these NDEs, people started saying, I saw these brilliant, vibrant colors, and I was like, me too. And so that was awesome, that was just awesome to hear other people talk about that. I believe that we all have a spark of God in us. And, it was funny as I started driving at 11, and I always had a purpose, and I was an excellent driver. And, I have places to go and people to see and things to do. And I always got mad at people for making turns and not using their blinker. But now that I've learned through Judaism and NDE that we're all a spark of God, when I see somebody in front of me taking a left without a blinker, I can say to myself, that's God taking a left without a blinker. So, I hear these people talk about their higher soul. And in Judaism, and it's the year 5781, and coming up in the next this next month, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah is the new year. It's going to be the year 5782. And we have, let me just run through and tell you the Jewish books. The Old Testament is our Tanakh. All right. The Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Then we have the Talmud, and the Talmud explains what the Torah is telling you. Like, for instance, boys should be circumcised. Well, it doesn't say what should be circumcised. Your nose, your ear, your finger, and you wouldn't know what needs to be circumcised unless you had the Talmud. And the Talmud not only explains the Torah, but it also goes through some mystical and deeper things. Like, we have 3 levels of our soul. People are saying their higher soul. And in Judaism, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and you can find these in our sacred texts, it is the neshama, the ruach, and the nephesh. And the nephesh is the lower one. So, yes, we've known about these things. And people are seeing the Acacia records. Well, starting at Rosh Hashanah, the new year, up until Yom Kippur, God opens up the book of life. And in the book of life is listed everyone. And everything is decreed for the next year. But so these records, having records up in heaven, is nothing new to Judaism. Now, a lot of people say, I don't relate to the Bible. I just don't relate. I started reading the Bible in second grade, and I found out through studying through my life that there are 4 layers of understanding. Every chapter, every verse. There is the simple meaning. There is an allegoric meaning, which is like symbolic or imagery. There is the homiletic, and then there's the hidden and the mystical. And the hidden and the mystical are referenced in the book that you've probably heard called the Zohar. And the Zohar gets into way deep things, like how you can see spirits all around you. It gets into these levels of souls. And there is an app called Sepharia, Sepharia. And every verse in the Bible, Sepharia has gotten it together. Most of it's in English, a bit in Hebrew, but it will explain every verse. And it will tell you what our rabbi said about that, what the Zohar says, what the Talmud says, what the Tanya says. So now today they've put it together in a free app to where you can go and learn about each one of these verses. You don't have to have rooms full of books. It's all laid out right there for you. So these things that people say, I don't relate to the Bible, but they're talking about things that are in the Bible. It's just that you have to dig much deeper.
You mentioned 3 levels of the soul, right?
Right.
Can you give us more information about that, what each level does?
The neshama is the higher soul. And all of these are you. The nephesh is your soul. The nephesh energizes the soul of man. Okay? That's who you have in you now. Mm-hmm. And then you have the ruach, which is the emotion. It guides your emotions in your soul. And then you have the neshama, and that's the intellect. That's the higher part. So that's a little bit. You just have to get in. There's a lot to study.
Right.
And when you get in to start studying, you find out that just in the Torah, just in those 5 books, there are lifetimes of information to learn. You start going, and you're like, I don't have enough time in one life to learn everything that there is to learn. So the important part that I got out of it at that time, going through the Tanya, is that there are 3 layers. There are 3 levels. There's 7 worlds. There's 7 layers of heaven, and there's 7 layers below. Now, if you go to the last 7th layer, you don't get out. But everybody has to have a cleansing period to go back and to be reincarnated, or to stay and learn, or to go to the other worlds. Is you're reading like how in the Torah, God says, build the ark. He said, put gold on the outside and gold on the inside. Well, the next level, God is saying that he wants your outsides to match your insides. So that's an example of how it starts going. It gets deeper and deeper and deeper. Reincarnation. The Jews have always believed in reincarnation. It's in the Tanya, it's in the Zohar, it's in the Talmud. It's even alluded to in the Torah. In Ecclesiastes 1:4, it says, a generation departs and a generation comes. In Job 1:21, he said, naked I left my mother's womb, and naked I shall return. So that's just, a brush. I look at the Torah like the footnotes. And then you got to get into the other books to get deeper and deeper. We know Cain killed Abel. Abel came back as Moses. And Cain came back as Jethro, which was Moses' father-in-law. Moses married Zipporah, and her father was Jethro. And they had to fix their relationship, and they had to to work on. And so when you come back to rectify things, to either fix them, or there was opportunities given to you. There were missed opportunities. So the opportunities will come back around. Those who do not learn their lessons are doomed to repeat them. So this is all woven in.
I never knew that they're stating that Moses is the resurrection of Cain.
Yes. Yes. And no, Moses was Abel. Cain killed Abel.
Okay. And so Moses is the resurrection of Abel.
Right. And Jethro was the resurrection of Cain. So we talk about reincarnation. That's something that, once again, the Torah was given to Moses 3,300 years ago. 1,400 years before Jesus was the Muslims. No, I'm sorry, was the Buddhists. Then came Jesus. And then in the year 1400 AD, that's when the Muslim religion started. So we go way back into what we've known. And of course, Judaism is the belief of one God, and all of these religions stem from Judaism. So a lot of people talk about the veil, and the veil is something we have known. The veil is put there so people can't remember what they were taught before. Because if you remember what you were taught before, it takes away your free will. If you knew the answers, then you would just go with that. And so God created evil so that we could have free will. Because if everything was peaches and cream and hunky-dory, then we wouldn't have anything. Should I go out tonight and drink, or should I stay at home and study the Torah? Mm-hmm. It's got to have a yin and a yang. It's got to have a good and a bad. So that is why when you see evil, know that it's been put there so that you could have free will of whether to do it or not. Otherwise, we'd all be in heaven.
All right. Now, you have met an angel. So let's hear about how you met an angel. And then if you don't mind, can you follow up on what the Torah says angels are?
Every Jew has a right of return, and you can go to live in Israel, and they give you a little sum of money for 6 months. And so life was getting pretty tough here, and my daughter was junior in college, and I wanted to live close to a synagogue. I can't afford to live next to a synagogue here in Memphis, Tennessee, where I live. So for many reasons, I wanted to go to Israel. And everybody says when you try to go to Israel, it's going to be really hard. And for 7 months, I am calling the Jewish people that help you get over there. And I'm praying, and I'm crying, and I'm begging, and I'm pleading, God, please let me go live in Israel. I want to go live in Safat. I saw a video online, and I saw the parking lot, a little bit of the alley. I saw the home. I said, that's the home I want. And I started paying for it before I was even approved to go and live in Safat. I was going to go. And so one morning before I woke up, it was kind of in the twilight of waking up. All of a sudden, I was standing in front of my house in Israel. And the house was behind me, and I was looking over this brick wall. And there's no way I would have known the tree landscape, the mountain landscape, what was below, because everything's on a tier in Safat. It's on the side of a mountain. What's below? Nothing. I was standing there facing all of this, and I looked to my left, and there was my angel. And he was 7 feet tall. I couldn't see a facial, eyes and nose and mouth. And he was lit up like in this white with this gold outline and wings. And he said to me, are you sure you want to move to Israel? And I said, well, I haven't thought about not coming till you said something. And he said, life is going to be hard here too. And I said, well, just hadn't thought about that either. And he said, well, it's time to go back. And so the next thing I know, I'm coming in my kitchen window feet first. And I had came in over where I had a shed. And over the shed in that area of the yard were those brilliant colors that I saw in between my lights. And to the right were the muted colors of the earth. And I start coming in slowly, feet first. And before the top half of my body came in, I yelled back to him, I do want to go. I do want to go. And I came in and I came back and I came down through my throat and came back into my body. And I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what just happened. I just met my angel. Well, it turned out that I got approved and I moved to Savant, and he was exactly right. It was hard. And it was hard because I have a disability in my hips and my legs, and it was hard living on the side of a mountain. But that was a really wild experience. Every blade of grass, every leaf that falls is ordained by God. And there is an angel. And there are angels of the sea. There is an angel of Memphis. There's an angel of San Antonio. There's an angel of the United States, an angel in Israel. The Garden of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps, if you've ever read that in the Bible. There are angels that we have individually. Different angels have different jobs. And when there's time to pray, a Jew prays 3 times a day, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. And those times the angel stops whatever he's doing and goes and prays and worships God and comes back. And different angels have different jobs. You have Angel Michael and Gabriel, and they have big jobs. Raphael, he helps with healing. You have Gabriel, he's a messenger. It's just different angels have different jobs.
Can you cite any information from the Torah or the Talmud about the angels and what they do?
Let's just say Abraham, when he had circumcised himself and his whole tribe, there were 3 angels that came to talk to him. And one of them told Abraham that Sarah was going to be pregnant in a year. And Sarah kind of laughed. And the angel heard Sarah and said, why did you laugh? And she said, I didn't laugh. He said, oh, yes, you did. And so that angel's job was to come and tell Abraham that they were going to have a child. The other 2 angels started off for Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham walked with these 2 angels, almost to Sodom and Gomorrah. And that's when Abraham was talking to God, if there are 50 righteous people, will you not take these cities away? If there are 15 righteous, he goes on down. It's kind of like how many bottles of beer on the wall. Yeah. He goes from 50 to 40 to 30 to 20 to 10, and so God keeps going, yeah, if there's 30, yeah, if there's 20, yeah, if there's 10. Well, those 2 angels came to send fire and brimstone. One of them helped send the fire and brimstone. And the other angel that came got Lot and his family out. Lot told the people, don't come in and rape the angels. And he said, you can even take my daughters. And so the angel got Lot and said, it's time to go. Let's go now. And got Lot and his 2 daughters and his wife out. And his wife was the one that turned to a pillar of salt when she looked back. So in that story, we can see that each angel had a very specific job to do when it came.
It's my understanding that angels are not the next evolution of humans. They're completely different beings, separate from us, and probably, a higher vibration than us. Is there anything in the Jewish literature that says that they are separate from us and completely different beings?
A lot. And I hear people that come on your show and other shows, and they said, I've read the Torah, or I've read the Tanakh, which is the Jewish Bible, or I've read the Zohar, or I've read Tanya. These things aren't things that you read. They're things that you study. And there are a ton of references in there about angels and their certain jobs and what they do. And so, yeah.
Is Ezekiel, is that part of the Torah or part of the Jewish literature, or is that?
Yes, you have the Torah, which is the first 5 books. Uh-huh. Then you have the writings, and then you have the prophets. Mm-hmm. And Ezekiel is part of the prophets, like Kings and Ecclesiastics and things like that are the writings section of the Tanakh, which is, Christians call it the Old Testament.
Right. And the Ezekiel, I think it's 1 through 4, but I'm not sure. I mean, in my opinion, it's almost describing a spaceship. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but I'd love to see what that app says about that.
Yes. And in the Zohar, there are parts of it that talk about aliens and UFOs and mermaids and the fire salamander and the phoenix. The phoenix is a bird that lives 1,000 years, and once after 1,000 years, it explodes itself and it starts back fresh. And how that started was Noah saw this phoenix bird in the corner, and he hadn't been feeding it. And he asked the phoenix bird, he said, "Why haven't you said anything? We haven't fed you." And the phoenix bird, I said, "I saw that you were so busy, I didn't want to bother you." And so he prayed to God and asked that God would bless that bird. And that's how that started, with the 1,000 to live 1,000 years. Another interesting thing that's in the Zohar, it's also in several other books, but you wondered how the pyramids were built.
Right.
I can't say for direct knowledge about the pyramids, but the temple is cut with the same kind of stones that are 60 tons, 80 tons. Solomon found out about this worm, and the worm was called Samir, I think. I've got it here in my notes. And so he had to go to, he went to the king of demons, because he thought he knew where this worm was. And this worm could cut through stone and cut through wood. And in the Torah, God said, do not cut the stones of the temple with iron, because iron may have been used for war. So he didn't want that iron to be melted down and to be used. So Solomon was trying to figure out, well, how are we going to cut the stones to build the temple? Well, Solomon approached the king of demons, and he says, I don't have the worm that you're looking for, but the angel of the sea has the worm. And so he went to the angel of the sea, and the angel of the sea said, I gave it to this other fowl, this other bird. And so Solomon tricked the bird and got the worm. And that's how the stones were cut from the temple. And since then, we don't know. It could have lived up until 1,000 years ago, this worm. But all kinds of things are in the Zohar. But you're going to have to start with the Torah, go through the Talmud to get to the Zohar, because you won't understand anything. It's a progression. And you're going to have to know about these things. But you will learn the Zohar through that app, Safaria. You'll learn enough to where you'll know some really cool stuff.
Where does the Kabbalah fit in with all this?
The Kabbalah is the mystical practice of the Zohar.
Okay.
So the Kabbalah practice is the practice of the Zohar. And that's also, it's very deep.
Of those 3 books, which is your favorite to study?
I take 6 classes a week on the Talmud. I have studied for the past 7 years, 4 to 10 hours a day of the Torah. The Zohar, I've gotten bits and pieces of, enough to say, I don't know, I know just enough to be dangerous. Mm-hmm. So I love the Torah. Just every time you read it, we go through the Torah every year. We start at Genesis, we go all the way through. And every time I read it, I learn something new. But if you can, even if you just read like one chapter and something pops out in that chapter, a verse, and you're like, whoa, what does that mean? And you take that verse and you look up on the app Sephora, it will take you several hours, even with some of it that's in Hebrew. You just go on to the next reference and go on to the next reference. It takes you quite a bit of time just on that one verse. So what I like to say is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's what you have to do with these books.
All right. Now, you mentioned that you've met a ghost. Can you tell us about that? And does it talk about ghosts within the Jewish literature? I
haven't run across ghosts, although it says don't talk to the dead in certain spirits. So, yeah, there are some, don't talk to spirits of the dead. So with all of this information, there's some references, I'm sure. But my dad used to say, there's ghosts in the house. And I was like, oh, I'm scared. And he goes, don't worry, they're just jokesters. He said, the other night I woke up to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and I had my boxers on it. I turned around and one of them was like in a Joker outfit. And he was just standing there and he was doing this. And his dad's standing there with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So I heard about this for years. So one night when I was about 10 years old, I was in bed, my room was dark, and I had my door open and there was a light shining down the hall. And all of a sudden I turned over and I looked into the hall and there was this ghost. I could see right through him and he was dressed up as Santa Claus. And I pinched myself and I looked at him and I rubbed my eyes and I looked at him and I put my head under the covers and I came back and I looked at him and he went like this on his nose. And he was there for several minutes and then he just faded away. And so I finally did get to see the ghost. And Dad saw a UFO over the house. He was a lawyer. He was coming in from Mississippi. He saw an orb that followed his car. And he was going down a highway and it was at dusk. And as, he would go over a hill, the orb would go over a hill with him. And it would, come back down off the hill and it would go. And he said it followed him for dozens of miles. Well, Dad died when I was 18. And I felt like when I came home from the hospital, he was riding in the car with me. And Dad always said, I will come and see you if I can when I die. So my mom and my brother and I were talking, and Mom was like, I don't know where any of the paperwork is, where the bills, the banking, the insurance, I don't know where anything is. Dad, your father took care of all that. I said, have you looked in his closet? She said, I hadn't been there in a couple of days. So I said, I'll go look. So I went and looked, and at the top of this closet was a stack this tall, and everything Mom needed was there. All the bills, the insurance, the banking, everything was in that stack. And I brought it. She goes, oh my gosh. She goes, that was not there a couple of days ago. So we talked for another hour or so, and Mom and my brother said they were going to go to bed. And I said, Mom, I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll go through this stack and I'll organize it for you. So you won't have to. I'll make it in nice piles and put it all back together. So she said, okay, that sounds like a good idea. So they went to bed. And as I'm stacking all of this stuff, I looked off into the dining room, and we had this cabinet that had 3 shelves on it and had family china, old heirlooms in there. And there was a light in the china cabinet. And all of a sudden, the light in the china cabinet came on. And I saw the apparition of my dad. He was 6'2". He was a big man. And I froze and I thought, oh my gosh, that's Dad. I can't tell him to leave. This is his house. And after I thought that, his apparition went away and the light went off in the china cabinet. And that was Dad's visit to come and see me.
That was amazing.
Yeah. So the gods happened this winter. And watching all these near-death experiences and all of these videos and the meditation videos, excuse me, I was learning more and more about that we have gods. And I had done a guided meditation, and I met one of my gods. And he looks like the elf, Orlando Bloom, playing the elf in The Lord of the Rings. And in this guided meditation, it said, look down, he's prepared food for you. And there's a place in Memphis that has the most fabulous cheese sticks, Young Avenue Deli. In this meditation, it says, look down, the God has prepared something for you. And I look down, and it's these Young Avenue Deli cheese sticks. And I just burst out laughing. It just totally shocked me. But and so I started asking, I want to know all of my God's names. I want to know who you are. So I've been doing guided meditation. I was doing meditation. And I'd just be walking around the house and I'd say, I want to know who you are. And whoever you are, thank you for helping me. And so I always believe in having an attitude of appreciation, an attitude of gratitude. And so I went to let the dogs out. And in my third eye, I saw this woman who was from India. And she was in the Indian garb. She had the red dress and the dot in the forehead and the gold bangle bracelets. And she said, hi, I'm your God, and my name is Chanty. I said, Chanty? She said, yeah. And I was like, okay, all right, yeah, Chanty. Yeah. Sure. She said, Google me. I said, okay, all right, I'll Google you. And all of a sudden, beside her, I had a flash, and it was a Native American Indian guy. And he said, I'm also one of your gods. My name is Itawamba. And I was like, Itawamba. Okay, right. So I let the dogs out and I go back to bed and I hop on my phone, and she had told me, Chanti, Google me. I was like, okay, I'll do that. You got that one. And Itawamba said his name, and he said Itwamba. I said, okay, all right, I'm going to go check you guys out. And I go back to bed and I type in Chanty. And the first thing that popped up was a movie that was made in India with Indian actors, and it was named Chanty. And I started looking through the other things that popped up, and Chanty is a name for a woman, and it means song. And in Hebrew, my name is Shira, and that also means song. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is wild. So I was like, okay, now we're going to do Itawamba. And I typed him up. And in the early 1800s, there was a chief of the Chickasaw Indians, and his name was Itawamba. And he was trying to broker a deal with President Andrew Jackson so that the Indians could keep their land. And Andrew Jackson kept wanting to send the Indians west of the Mississippi River. Well, Itawamba went to the west of the Mississippi River and came back and went back up to Washington. I think that he lived in the northern Alabama, around Muscle Shoals, and all in that area. And so he ended up dying of pneumonia, going back to Andrew Jackson for numerous times, but on his last time, and he died of pneumonia. And the land was just not good enough. But after Itawamba died, Andrew Jackson said, that's it, everybody out, and moved. So both of those were verifiable names. And it was really cool.
What does the Jewish literature say about guides?
I have not run across anything about gods. With today, with Google, you could go on and type Jewish thought on spirit guides, or Jewish thought on angels, or the Shamir worm, or what worm built the temple, and things will pop up. So along in your studies, if you have questions, you can just Google it. It'll pop up.
That's great. Yeah, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Can you give me more information about the 7 levels of heaven?
The only thing that I can tell you right off the cuff without going through my notes is the more you learn, the higher you go. And the quickest way to heaven is through the trials here on earth. And there are certain levels that you can go to. Like, I've had my 3-year-old died. That can get you into the first level or the second level. And there's certain things that you experience in trials. And if you learn from them, then you can go up levels. And so you may go and you're at the 3rd level of heaven, and you go, well, I really want to do what the souls are doing on the 4th or 5th level. So you would sit down with your guides and with your angels, and you would map out what you need to do for your soul to grow. And you may go to this world, or you may go to some of the other worlds. And wherever your soul will grow in what you need to learn in that area, that's where you'll go. But like I know about the 7 levels below, is everybody has a time where they have to be cleansed. You're like, imagine you've been driving your car all your life and you never took a bath, and you're going to meet the king of the universe, and you haven't washed your car and you haven't taken a bath. Well, in Judaism, we believe that you get that bath, you get that cleansing for up to a year. So we read Psalms for those that have crossed for 11 months, because we hope that you don't have to stay for the full 12 months. And by reading Psalms, it helps the soul to cross over. And so you can go down. The only one that you don't get out of is the 7th level.
If someone wants to connect with their guides, can you recommend how to do that?
I did a guided meditation on YouTube. There are tons of guided meditations on YouTube. If you're interested in lives, people do past life regression. Well, there's a book called Journey of Souls, and it was written by Dr. Michael Newton. And the audio book is on YouTube. And it's a 2-part book. It's actually like 14 hours long. And he had interviewed or gone through in between lives meditations for like 7,000 people. And he narrowed it down to 30 people and shared in this 14-hour book about the lives in between and the similar experiences that they had. So I don't know, that kind of answered your question, but I kind of went off on the in between the lives.
Well, I think the easiest thing is to just search for the videos on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, for the guided meditations. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Meditation, it takes a while to get your mind quieted, but it helps me when I listen to a guided meditation that will take you there. I can't afford to go to, the psychologist and pay hundreds of dollars to do this, and you don't need it. Mm-hmm. I went through one guided meditation with an ND that is online, and I liked her a lot. And I called her up, and she took me through a guided meditation. And I just went back and met the Orlando Bloom elf guy in that guided meditation. And so It was something that I had done on my own. And there, you know, I figured, well, I'll go to a psychologist and pay a couple $100, or I could pay her $100 and see what she can help me do. And it ended up that I could have done this by myself all along.
Yeah.
So just go on YouTube and start pulling up, and you'll find them. Everything's on YouTube.
All right, Shira, you've gone through a lot in your life and you've had some profound lessons. Can you share some of those with us?
I married this guy twice, and I was crying and crying and crying and praying to God that we could work this out. And I kept hitting a wall. And a friend called me and said, his name was Craig, said, "Did you hear about Craig? He's on America's Most Wanted list. He's wanted for armed robbery." And one thing I learned is thank God for unanswered prayers. That if you're praying and you're praying and you're praying, and it doesn't come to where you want it to come, it will come how you need it to come. And you just got to trust the process. You'll see when you get to the other side that you were saved and it was meant to work out like it was. I married a friend, and that was a gut-wrenching divorce that did not work out. And so I got married again, and we had, in the first marriage, I'd had a miscarriage in the second trimester. Okay, so then got married, and we had Laura, and then I had 2 other miscarriages. And if you go through those experiences of having miscarriages, some things are just not meant to be. Like with the other husbands, there's a reason and there's a season. And there's a reason for the season. And sometimes these souls just are not meant to make full circle and come here on earth. But it might be so that you learn some lessons along the way, and you will, about yourself and your relationship with your creator. So then we had Savannah. I got fixed and said, that's it. No more children. 6 months later, we had a house fire. It was 7:00 in the morning, and my husband had gone to work. And I came into the living room, saw smoke coming out of the girls' room, opened the door, ceiling to floor, as black as night, like a 500-degree oven. Pulled Savannah out. She was 9 months old, went back in the room, got Laura. Laura was 3 at the time. Savannah died that day. And a man who always went the other direction to go to work came our way. And he just had learned CPR a month before the fire. And he gave Savannah CPR. And there is in the IANS group a PMH Atwaters. And she talks about the after effects from near-death experiences when they're babies or young. And it's absolutely true what she has to say. So if you've had a child or know of a child who's had a near-death experience as a young child, go and listen to her. She's got truth in everything she says. So they flew us down, me and the 2 girls, and their father came down the next day. Flew us down to Galveston, Texas, to the Shriners. They take care of burn children. Over the course of a month, they kept pulling us in and said, "This is it. Say goodbye to them." And I would lean in their ear and I would say, "You tell God you want to stay with your mother." And I would pray and pray and pray. And I'd say, "God, look, I've had such a hard time having children. Surely I want them more than you. Please let me keep them." Well, Savannah, who was 9 months old at the time, she got out of the hospital in a month. Both of them were burned 50% of their bodies. 7 weeks later, Laura died. And it was absolutely crushing. And I went through, as any parent would, a time of mourning. And what I finally came to is, if you have a child that has died, or a loved one that has died, or a parent that has died, there is time for you to mourn, and then there's time for you to stop. Because the ones that have crossed over, they have it made. There's, murders, rapes, wars, mortgage payment, heartbreaks. They have it made. They're with God. And so I think when you go over a mourning period, it's more like misery loves company, because you realize I got to live this life existence without this soul. But don't be sorry for them, and pick up your pieces, pick up yourself, and get moving. And it's kind of like, I look at it like a kid goes in and says, Mom, when's dinner going to be ready? And Mom goes, in an hour. And the kid goes, in an hour? That's forever. And the mom says, go play. And then when somebody we love dies, we go to God and we say, God, when can I be with my loved one? And God says, in 50 years. And we go, in 50 years? That's forever. And God says, go play. So when the ones you love have passed, be happy for them. You remember them. And then their anniversaries, you think about them, but know that they have it made. Know that they're in the hands of God, and that energy never dies. It always moves forward. And so I know that Laura used to say, Mommy, let's snuggle. So if I live a good life, we can snuggle on a cloud forever. And I love looking at the Hubble telescope and seeing all these nebulas and the things that we're seeing out in the universe. And when I get there, Laura and I are going to go tour the universe. Mommy's got a plan, and she's got a field trip planned. And I will join her when my job is done. I haven't gone yet because my job's not done. We don't go 1 minute too soon or 1 minute too late. When our time is up, we go. So don't carry on feeling mourning and sadness. Would you feel sad for me if I won $1 million? You'd be like, woohoo, Shira, way to go. That's great. And that's the same thing that's happened with our loved ones that have moved on.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
I didn't ask you in the beginning or even before we started, but do you have anything that you would like to promote? Do you have a book or a website or a class or anything?
I don't, but I would like to promote saying, if you don't feel like you have anything in common with the Bible, go look up this app, Sepharia, and start from Genesis 1. And you can pull up Genesis 1 on Sepharia and start studying. And you'll get to learn all these cool things that I've been talking about and much, much more. Even if you take one verse, or if you read one little paragraph, that's more than what you did yesterday. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So that I would encourage people just to try to do, because you're going to learn a whole lot of cool stuff. And I do have some last minute things or some last messages I'd like to share.
Sure.
And these are some things that I learned through life, is that when you have a problem, always pull your head out of the tree and step back and look at the forest, because there's a bigger picture that's going on. And you can't see the solution if your head is stuck up in a tree. Have an attitude of gratitude. True happiness is an attitude of gratitude. So when you're down and out, go walk over to your kitchen sink. You've got running water. You didn't have to walk 5 miles to go get water. And then boil it so that you could drink it, or heat it over a fire. You even have a hot water spigot to boot. Write your gratitude list down. Start with, you got hair, you got eyes, you got nose, you got mouth, you got your organs work, your hands work, you got clothes. You only not got clothes, you got clean clothes. Start with a gratitude list, and you will find happiness in your deepest, darkest. Remember, it's not what God is doing to you, but what God is doing for you. Don't quit before the miracle. Remember what a difference a day makes. Hang in there. And no matter how bad things are, there's a positive and negative to every situation you're in. Not just on a car battery, but in every situation you're in. Acknowledge the negative, but hold on to the positive, and have that attitude of gratitude. We are here for our souls to grow, and we only go through trials. My father used to say, this too shall come to pass, and then there'll be a whole new problem, which is not what I wanted to hear at 16. But it really taught me that this is what we're here for, is to overcome these hurdles and to learn these lessons and for our spirit to grow. And through this growth, we'll be closer to our Creator. Remember, everything always, and I mean always, works out. You didn't think you'd make it last month. You didn't think you'd make it the month before. You didn't think you'd make it the month before that. But you know what? You made it. And you're going to make it this month, and you're going to make it through whatever you get is going on right now. And when you get to the other side, and I promise you, you will, you'll be far stronger than you ever imagined that you could be. So lots of life trials, and this is what we're here for. And once again, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
All right, Shira, thank you for that message, and thank you so much for sharing with us today. I really appreciate you, and I wish you the best.
Thank you so much, Jeff, and I'll be watching you every night. Thank you so much for what you're doing for us.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you. All right, enjoy the rest of your day over there.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.